Hey, how's it going, guys? We are joined by former Congressman Tim Ryan. How's it going?
Going great, going great. I'm in the parking lot of my kids' basketball practice, so sorry for the ad hoc move here.
We appreciate you coming out. I know multiple of us have, me and Lycan both have had interactions with your campaigns before, so we're really interested in talking to you. The first thing I wanted to ask you is, right now the political environment is unbelievably divisive, and you ran multiple campaigns in this political environment, both for president on the national level and for Senate against J.D. Vance. What are the challenges of running in such a divisive political environment?
Well, you can get caught up in the energy of the environment sometimes, as opposed to trying to create a new path or shape the energy to go in a different direction. So the big risk really is, not being aware of how you're responding, and you're just adding to the divisiveness in the country or in the state that you're running in, or the congressional district or wherever. So really trying to avoid that. But I think the big way to the jujitsu move, I guess you could say, is really having big themes, trying to stay out of the weeds on the issues that people just have a visceral reaction to, and really try to get to some unifying themes in the campaign. We had, obviously, abortion was a huge issue. The war in the Ukraine was a big issue. So I talked a lot about freedom, whether it was freedom from Vladimir Putin, invading your country, or freedom that a woman should have from the government intervening in her healthcare decisions. So trying to find these big, basic American principles that can help kind of ground people and say, well, I'm for freedom too, and so you can use those big American themes as ways of trying to get people on the same page. But you can't take the bait, because I think a lot of times the other side benefits from, us getting in a fight about every little thing, and leaders should be about the big vision for the country that unifies us. So tricky, easier said than done, I can tell you, because you're getting in you're in a contest, so you can tend to react in a way that makes matters worse, not better.
I know back in the 2020 campaign, and both during your Senate campaign, one of the big themes, and I was working for 21st Century Democrats at the time who endorsed you, so I had to track your themes, I had to check out your messaging. At the time, it was big union pushing the unions, pushing working class issues. Is this an example of one of the big themes you think is a uniting issue for Ohioans, definitely considering their history with union manufacturing jobs?
Yeah, and then that workforce has changed. I mean, a lot of younger people now, and, this group will know better than I do, but, a lot of people aren't working in manufacturing shops. I mean, in Ohio, we're a little bit older, a little bit whiter in most of the state. And so you got to, that was a big theme, was working class people. And I didn't mean white people. I would get, discussions with people in the media well, Tim Ryan's the white working class guy. I'm like, I'm not the white working class guy. I'm the working class guy, whether you're white or black or brown or gay or straight or a man or a woman, or you're in service industry or manufacturing or whatever. If you're out there, busting your rear end, doing everything right, I'm for you. And so that is a very unifying theme. I think, when Democrats win, we, like Sherrod Brown in a place like Ohio, you've got to be 80% economic message. You look at a guy like Sherrod, my record as well, very progressive. There weren't any bills that I didn't vote for, didn't support, didn't advocate for on gun control or health care. Voted for the Affordable Care Act, voted for the energy bill back in 2009. All of those things. But you've got to frame it because in an economic manner, because most people are still living paycheck to paycheck. 40% of the people in the country couldn't survive a $400 emergency, which means you blow your tire out or you have a health care issue. So I would say yes, working class, but I think we've got to talk about how that looks maybe a little bit different now, especially with young people trying to get into the workforce. interest rates at 6-7%, you know, this economic squeeze around food and bills and healthcare. So we've got to stay on an economic message. That's how Obama won. That's how Bill Clinton won. In a lot of ways, you know, Biden was talking about that too. But the Republicans, they want to fight culture wars because that's how you divide people. But economics is a unifier, so we got to, I think, stay. You know, it doesn't mean too. This is an important thing to say. It doesn't mean you back down 1 inch. You know, if you're at a debate or someone asks you, like, yeah, absolutely, I'm pro-choice. You know, government shouldn't be in that business of making women's healthcare decisions. But, you know, issues around having a child are economic issues too. And then get right back on your economic message, if you understand what I'm saying.
How determined are you to remain on that economic message when the winds are kind of changing politically, when I guess the population is starting to care about other issues? Today, a lot of people here in Cincinnati, we went out, we were knocking on doors and talking to voters, and it seemed like things that were coming up over and over again were definitely more nebulous or more kind of socio-political things. Like a lot of people were saying they wanted to defend democracy in not voting for Trump, or a lot of people were saying that they wanted to defend a woman's right to choose in terms of abortion. Do you think that when you're in a state like Ohio, and I mean, I'm sympathetic to getting bogged down in particular culture war issues that, you know, for a lot of reasons nobody wants to get bogged down in. Yeah, how do you decide, you know, to stay the course on econ policy versus dipping your toes more into the social or political battlegrounds for some of the culture wars issues?
So the best way to probably answer that is through probably an example of how I would maybe handle that. You know, I would say something along the lines of course, my record or the record for the party, if you're out canvassing on behalf of a candidate or you know, Democratic Party, we were the ones who put the ballot initiative on here in Ohio. We were the one that pushed it. We were the ones that won it with 57%. And we're proud of that, you know, and I would just say, and then the issues like democracy, to me, like, you only get a Donald Trump if there's fertile ground for a demagogue. And I think there's only fertile ground for a demagogue when people are struggling and they're not doing well. And we didn't have this, like, we didn't have these problems. We didn't have the threat of a demagogue when we had the largest middle class in the history of mankind. You know, when we had, you know, millions and millions of manufacturing jobs that were good paying union jobs. There was no room for a demagogue. You get if you said what Trump says now in 1950, 60, 70, 80, 90, you know, whatever, things started to deindustrialize and get worse. The lack of a middle class, the economic anxiety gave rise to the path for him to come in to threaten our own democracy. So we are absolutely we have to protect our democracy and make sure Donald Trump never sees the White House. But we also have to create an economic and political environment where the next demagogue can't get any oxygen because people are doing well. They're thriving. Like, Trump would say stuff and people in Ohio and other places would be like, yeah, man, he's saying what the fuck I want to say. None of these guys have done anything. He's like, you know, you know, I'm a Democrat, but I'm voting for him. Or, you know, I'm an independent. I've been waiting for a guy like this forever. Like, neither of these parties have done anything right for it. And that economic anxiety is what created the opportunity for a guy like Donald Trump to thrive. So that's what I say when getting back to these economic issues. And yet, you know, the worrisome, to me, the worrisome thing in the polling is Trump's favorables on the economy over Biden. That to me is a real red flag we got to worry about.
Here, something I'm kind of curious about. How do you think Democrats strategically can take credit for things they've done for the economy without sounding like they're out of touch about the economy? So there are stats, for instance, about how we've enjoyed some of the lowest stretches of unemployment at these levels in almost all of U.S. history, or that wages are growing, even for the poorest in society, you know, faster than they have for a long time. Year over year inflation has come down. But if you talk about these things, I think you kind of sound a little bit, some people will hear you and they'll just say like, oh, well, that's not true. You know, the cost of groceries is still high for me, or I haven't gotten a wage, or rent is unaffordable for me. What do you think Biden or Democrats, I guess largely in the country, should be doing to kind of take credit for some of their economic platform, which I think they need to do to set themselves apart from Republicans without just sounding like they're out of touch with the common man's financial struggles?
Yeah. See, there's a principle in The Art of War, which is a great strategic campaign book. And it says you meet people in the orthodox and you lead them to the extraordinary. And you have to meet people where they are. And I think where Biden has gotten into trouble is saying, well, this is Bidenomics. Well, people don't feel like things are going really well, and then you just put your name on something that is giving you not the credit, the blame for how they're feeling. So I think you have to start out, and this is an emotional business. Like, you have to meet people where they are emotionally and say, I know you're struggling. This is, we've got a lot of work to do. I know what you're going through. Kind of, you guys, a lot of you guys are too young to remember Bill Clinton, but he had like this, I feel your pain, kind of just aura about him. And so people really felt like he understood what they were going through. And we've got it, that's where it starts. And then you say, and look, because I know how you're feeling and I know what's happened in this country for the last 30 or 40 years, we have reindustrialized the country. And that's where you start bragging a little bit. The Inflation Reduction Act, $1 trillion commitment to clean energy, the infrastructure bill, bipartisan, the CHIPS Act, which here in Ohio, we're going to benefit from the Intel manufacturing plant, which may end up being a $100 billion investment. They needed the seed money from the CHIPS Act to actually finally, after 40 years, reshore chip manufacturing in the United States. Those jobs are going to pay $135,000 a year, like average. So meet them where they are and then brag and say, and this is why I've done this. And I know you're not feeling it, but we can't turn back. We got to keep going. And we're going to double down on the working people of this country and that kind of thing. But if you don't meet them where they are and just say, you start reading them, GDP numbers and, economic statistics, you're screwed, because people don't want to hear numbers. They want to know. There's an old saying, guy taught me when I first ran for office. He says, people don't care what you know. They want to know that you care. And that's it. If they know you care, like for some reason, a lot of people think Donald Trump cares about them, which obviously he doesn't. But you see the level of loyalty that happens when they actually think you care about them. And I think that's where, Biden, was the misstep with the Bidenomics thing, which is why we got to get back to that emotional connection of, we understand you're struggling, and here's what we're doing about it.
What is your outlook on the country as far as this next election cycle goes? The Trump came in and he upended a lot of norms. There was the expectation that maybe after he gets into office, he's going to change his ways. We clearly see that didn't happen, and it got progressively worse. And he's kind of fomented a lot of that kind of mentality in his base. Do you see that as something that even without a Trump re-election, something that goes away? Do we have someone to kind of bridge that divide and kind of reel us back into expecting better from our leaders?
Yeah, I hope so. It may take some time. It may take him stepping away from the public stage, or getting called out in such obvious ways that he can't get elected. And then maybe it will die down, and then we can heal and rebuild. That's the hope. But I do, not to get on a complete tangent here, but I actually think, like, underneath the poisonous political discourse that we have, and there's some exciting things happening in the country, around green technologies and, the reshoring. And, I love some of the stuff, like how we're healing vets with MDMA and psilocybin, how we're healing addicts with like cannabinoids and cannabis and things like that. How regenerative agriculture is like starting to get some momentum behind it. How doctors are healing patients using food as medicine to reverse chronic diseases, and the awareness around how broken and corrupt our food system is. Like, underneath the poisonous discourse, I think there are a lot of really cool things happening that if we could just a snake sheds its skin, if we could just shed this shit that's been going on since like the Vietnam War, like this country's ready to pop, and that's what keeps me going, is that there's a lot of good things going on. And I think telling people that, and giving them a path forward to self-actualize and to be healthy and to have a good job and have a good quality of life and not stress out about their economic situation, and how we can heal addictions and fentanyl and heroin and all of this stuff. Like, how do we heal? And then we got all these modalities that are out there, all these different ways of doing it. I got a group called We the People, and I'm basically highlighting all the stuff I just mentioned. Like this, no one's talking about all this stuff. It's really cool, and I mean, people get really excited about that kind of thing. We could actually heal addiction and heal trauma and grow healthy food and actually be healthy, and the union piece of like having higher wages and good health care and all that stuff. Anyway, getting people excited about it has got to be the path forward. We got to go on an adventure together and get to better somehow. Get to better.
A big thing that really bothered me about the campaign, the Senate race in Ohio, with J.D. Vance specifically, was the just lack of authenticity on any level to his character, whether it was him releasing the books, talking about Trump being heroin for America before then endorsing Trump just a few years later, the complete 180. It felt like, though, on the campaign, these things were quickly just put under the couch and ignored, and all of that inauthenticity just faded away, and he was able to make the Trumpian performance, get on the stage, do the circus, and the truth of what he believed, or whether he's being authentic, or whether this is for money, or whatever it is, all that washed away, and it just became who's putting on the biggest show. How do you make those types of facts matter again in the public conversation?
Well, you got to put on a better show. You got to get people more excited about what's happening and about what you want to happen. Trump clearly was running a campaign on grievance, and just to mention, the Democratic Party brand too is not great in places like Ohio. They see us as a party that's really out of touch. And we can't continue to have that. But I also think, we were up 5 points going into the Labor Day, and then we could not get any help from Chuck Schumer or the Democrats in Ohio or in D.C. And Mitch McConnell came in and gave J.D. Vance like $40 to $50 million, and that's we just could not keep our head above water at that point. But our message was working. Like I said, I talked to Schumer a couple times. I was like, we need $10 million, bro, and we'll put this guy to bed. I don't think Ohio wanted to vote for him, but we didn't have the resources to put him away. And I think, to me, I think having a working class candidate win a state like Ohio would have been a huge shift for the party and the image of the party to say, well, Ohio's got Sherrod Brown and Tim Ryan. It must be a working class party again. And so, but you gotta, like I said, you gotta emotionally connect to people, and we've got to rehabilitate the Democratic Party brand. And I get people mad at me all the time because I'm critical of the party. It's not because I don't love who's in it, and I'm friends with a lot of these people, which makes it very uncomfortable. But the reality is, this guy's a freaking insurrectionist. This guy is terrible. And his crew, Jim Jordan and Cruz and Hawley, and these are bad guys. They're terrible. They tried to overturn the democracy, and we barely beat them. So, to me, a mature adult thing to do is to reflect and say, what are we doing wrong that we are neck and neck with the insurrectionists who are trying to overthrow the country? We have to figure that out, because we have a huge responsibility in making sure that we preserve the democracy, a woman's right to choose, and all these other things that we're talking about. But you've got to have an emotional connection to the voters and have more energy, more enthusiasm, more excitement. I think, especially the presidential campaigns, we tried to do some of this with our campaign, like music is healing. It's exciting. People like it. Getting artists in that aren't Democrat, Republican, just in it for the good of the country. We had Dave Matthews in. We had Jackson Brown in. Taylor Swift wanted to come in, but I wouldn't let her. No, I'm joking. But having that kind of energy around the campaign can help put on a better show than the one that they're supposedly putting on, which many of us don't like at all.
Last question I'll ask, and we'll let you go back to your child's basketball game. Sorry. Some Democrats I talk to, they count Ohio out. They say Ohio went red this time and this time and this time. We need our resources elsewhere. And you were complaining about this earlier. How do you convince Democrats, activists, and small dollar donors that races in Ohio are worth it and that they're worth the effort and investment?
So this is a great question, and I got a great answer. Before I go on, I wanted to say thank you to all the young people who were in Ohio and doing the work for us here, because the grassroots effort is so powerful. Knocking on doors, eyeball to eyeball conversations, listening, learning, trying to understand each other, and getting our message out in that way is so much more effective than TV ads. So thank you for all of that. We've got to build that out and keep it going, because it makes a huge, huge difference. And I think the best answer, I forgot the question.
How do you convince people to invest in Ohio elections and winning it back?
So we had 2 ballot initiatives on, and this gets to my point about the Democratic brand not being good. So just take this as evidence. 2 ballot initiatives in the fall, one on marijuana legalization, straight legalization, and one on choice. We won both of those by 57% of the vote. Okay, we had a union initiative 10 years ago. They were trying to get rid of collective bargaining in Ohio, public sector, police, fire, teachers, the whole 9 yards. They passed it through the legislature. We put it on a ballot initiative. We won that with 63% of the vote, pro-union. So you take those 3 issues in the last 10 years. This would be perceived as being a Democratic state, right? A progressive state, a liberal state, however you want to say it. So you put a D by any of those, and we lose, And because I was pro-choice, pro for marijuana, pro-union, pro that, but I had the D by the name, and that hurt you here. So Ohio is not gone. It's not off the board. It's not Alabama. It is a swing state. But you need the right candidate with the right message, talking about the right issues and the right commitment from the national party to be able to get it done. But those ballot initiatives are showing you where the state is, and the state is, I think, a little bit center left, very conservative, a lot of rural areas, a lot of hunters, fishermen, But it's not a deep red state as some would guess. And we just gotta get the right candidates with the right message and the right monetary commitment. We can do it.
Awesome. Mr. Ryan, thank you for joining us. Real quick before you go, you wouldn't remember this because you can't see me, and it was a long time ago, and you met a lot of people, but you came to a Howland speech and debate match about 20 years ago, about 2004, 2005. I walked up to you in the cafeteria and tried to debate you on Iraq. I was a little conservative back then, so a lot has changed in the years, and now I'm completely on the other side. I never thought that would happen. So it's great to get to talk to you again.
You went to Howland High School?
No, I went to Niles.
Oh, you went to Niles, okay. Yeah, how about that? So, one for the good guys, right? We got you on the right team.
Yeah, see, people can be moved, but
well, thanks a lot, Tim. We appreciate it. We'll let you back to your kid, and we'll get back to our children over here.
Appreciate you guys. Thanks again.
Have a good one.